Happy month of April, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Void Podcast. I'm your host, Vince Loran, bringing you the best of our veteran, military spouse, and first responder community. I have the pleasure of doing a one-on-one with Matthew Brown, the co-founder and CEO of Chimney Trail Health from Fort Collins, Colorado. Matthew, welcome to the show. Tell us about you and your journey.
Thanks, Vince. I appreciate you having me on the show. As you mentioned, I'm the CEO of Chimney Trail Health. Quick note to your viewers, when I was a kid, I did not dream of being the CEO of a behavioral healthcare company. I grew up just south of Annapolis, and so like most kids that grew up in Annapolis, I wanted to be a naval officer. The academy's right there. Luckily, I got to do that, and I finished up my active duty career with some time on as the captain of one of our ships in San Diego, the USS Scout. And then I rotated from there. And my last official tour on active duty was with SEAL Team 17 doing innovation work for them. And it was during that tour that everything sort of happened that led to the creation of this company, Chimney Trail Health. We specialize in creative adaptations of something called cognitive behavior theory. And CBT is essentially a field of psychiatric and psychological research that teaches folks about how their feelings originate, and then the cognitions that cause them, and how to effectively challenge your thoughts if for whatever reason you're suffering from destructive levels of anxiety or depression. So I was in my tour with the SEALs and got a phone call about 9 months into my job there, that my best young officer from my time in command of USS Scout had taken his own life. He had gone to a Marine Corps exchange, he bought a gun, and he took his own life. And at the time, it came as a real shock, because this is the type of kid that, if Vince, if you'd have come on and said, "Hey, Matt, point to somebody on your ship who needs help," I would have grabbed him to help me think of somebody. I would not have thought it was him. So the SEALs at the time were really incredible, and I was doing innovation work for them and sort of traveling around and having conferences. And they said, "Well, why don't you investigate this? Because this isn't just a your ship, this is an all of us thing." And the more I dug into it, I'm sure all of your listeners probably know somebody who has suffered from destructive anxiety, depression, and if they're in the service, they probably even know somebody who's taken their own life. So I got the chance to research the problem, and I flew around the country and talked to psychiatrists and psychologists everywhere. And I thought that they were going to come back with some really technical stuff. And instead, they came back and they said, if we had a magic wand, we would wave it and make sure that everybody learned about something called cognitive behavior theory. And so we started a company to teach people just that.
First, Matthew, I just want to say kudos to everything you're doing, to your service in the Navy. It's a phenomenal journey. You grew up in Annapolis, wanted to be part of it, and you did that, right? So that's great stuff. But throughout this journey, you found that there's a need, and there's this niche. And unfortunately, one of your young fellow members of the military took their own lives, and salute to them, and they honor those because they are part of our family, and we miss them tremendously. But then Chimney Trail Health came about. So explore more. Tell us a lot more about this company you started.
Yeah. So like we were just talking about, the psychiatrists and psychologists all throughout the country, they have, well, first of all, the military and people that are in the military actually have access to a tremendous number of resources. They just, when it comes to addressing behavioral health related issues, it's not a question of resourcing the problem, because there are resources available. The problem is that, honestly, man, we just don't know how to, we don't know how our brains work. That's what it boils down to. When you have a feeling, you think that feeling is something unto itself. But reality, every feeling that you have is the result of a cognition or a thought. And if you're suffering from destructive anxiety, depression, or having suicidal ideations, the thought that is causing that feeling is generally something called a cognitive distortion. And that sounds all very technical, but really what it means is that our brains are calorie efficient. And so we create what they call heuristics, things to just quickly get to the right answer. But a lot of times those heuristics are wrong. So you have to challenge them with logical thinking. And if you never heard of this stuff before, you can end up thinking some totally not true stuff about yourself for really long periods of time and creating ruminations. And then when you get these ruminations, man, it just takes you down a bad path. Um, so our job at Chimney Trail Health is to educate people about these cognitive distortions and give them activities like self-paced, self-directed activities to help them learn about it and give them strategies for how to overcome it.
Absolutely. I'm intrigued about the title, right? Chimney Trail Health. If there's something behind it, I'd love to know about that. And also, any entrepreneurship challenges or lessons learned you'd like to share with our audience?
Oh man, the challenges and lessons learned is probably, that's like a whole nother podcast episode. But um, so Chimney Trail, the origin behind it, there's two stories. There's like the public facing, and then I'll give you the inside scoop also. Public facing is that when you are suffering from cognitive distortion, it's like you're in the wilderness. You feel very alone. In fact, if you interview anybody that is in a profound state of depression or is harboring suicidal ideations, or somebody who has made a suicide attempt and managed to survive, the one common thing that you'll hear all of them say is that they feel very alone in what it is that they're experiencing. Um, they're not alone, but in that moment, they feel very alone. And so the hearing more about it, it sounded like people were talking about just being in the wilderness. That's what it's like. And so the chimney is sort of the archetypal cornerstone of the home. It's like a symbol of civilization. It's a symbol of like stability. And so if you're in the wilderness and you got to find your way back to those things that are stable and secure in your life, there's that. It's like the trail to get back to that place. That's right. That's the public facing version. The inside scoop, man, is that I went to the Naval Academy and I had 7 roommates because we were in this like weird section of Bancroft Hall, which is where all the midshipmen live. And when you get in trouble at the Naval Academy, they call it getting smoked. Like they come and make you do push-ups and sit-ups and all that kind of stuff. In our room, one of the 7 of us was constantly in trouble. So yeah, we kept getting smoked. Literally, somebody in our room was constantly getting smoked, and so the upperclassmen, the first and second class, they took to calling our room the chimney because it was constant, like smoke was constantly coming out of it. So anyway, that's sort of the inside scoop.
I love it. I love it. Thank you for sharing the origin story of the name,
Yeah,
the profound name it has in the wilderness and getting smoked, literally.
yeah,
So talk
yeah,
about entrepreneurship challenges or lessons learned for our audience. They definitely can learn from you and everything you've been through.
yeah. So we've been at this, man, we've been at it for 6 years now, which to me is like I can't. It's like hard to imagine that we've been doing this for 6 years. Um, when I tell people like where we started and where we are now, it sounds very organized. It sounds like here's where we started, and then we made a bunch of decisions, and we ended up at this place. But in fact, it is very not It's not organized at all. It's disorganized. Um, we started because these psychiatrists and psychologists were telling me in my little research project with the Navy SEAL teams, they were telling me teach people about CBT. Uh, but then the process of creating a product that somebody could actually use was a really long journey. The doctors were saying that this needs to be introduced to pediatric audiences. So it's like kids kids should see this. The further left you can get when you're trying to address cognitive distortion, the better. So initially we were like, hey, let's build a kids product. And so we did that. Well, even before we did that, we said, hey, let's build a marketplace. And the marketplace will be somebody or someplace where people can go to get uh, the our offerings, but then also discounts on like other companies' outdoor gear. And it was like this really elaborate marketplace. And the more that we tried to explain it, the people got super confused by it. And it was just like, looking back on it, it was totally confusing. You didn't know what in the hell it was that we were doing. So in my entrepreneurial journey, some of it is just like figuring out how to develop a product. We knew like some of the challenge is that there's two ways to build a company, a scalable startup, not like a mom and pop shop in your hometown or whatever, but a scalable startup that could theoretically make a lot of money. One of them is to go to like venture capitalists and just ask, hey, what does a company that you're ready to invest in look like? And then you have to sort of conform your company to what it is that they want to invest in, or the metrics that they use in order to measure success. And the problem with that is that it require a lot of times these days it makes like you start thinking in terms of like developing an application because it's easy to scale that. The other way to build a company is to figure out what the problem is to be solved, figure out the right way to solve it, and then go about this really exhaustive process of refining your product until you have something that's scalable. I think that's the more productive way of doing it in terms of solving a problem. It's definitely not the more efficient way of doing it in terms of raising capital and that sort of stuff. So most of our entrepreneurial challenges have been designing the product in a way that is scalable, so it can touch the most people and have the most impact, and theoretically like make the most money, while at the same time staying true to the problem that we're trying to solve. And you get the idea, like just trying to stay true to the problem that we're trying to solve rather than sort of selling out, as they say.
Oh, definitely. Folks, you heard, a man who's been doing this 6 years, you know, give you 2 minutes worth of valuable insight. So, folks, hope you understand that this is where it's at. Matthew will tell you how to get a hold of him later, but he's doing some great things. They've done it for 6 years. It's not been a straight journey, but be true to your passion. I love hearing that. So what's on the horizon for Chimney Trail Health?
So I'm proud to report. I mean, literally just yesterday, we've been working on it for about the last 5 months, but just yesterday, we signed a contract to provide behavioral healthcare services to Ernst & Young, which I don't know how many of your viewers know EY, but it's Fortune 100 company, one of the biggest accounting firms in the world, probably the most trustworthy accounting firm in the world. And we're so happy to do it. It's actually a really cool program where we're going to be supporting their Army and Navy accounts, because there's a lot of people that come from the service to EY, and we're going to support the Army and Navy accounts first, and then hope to expand that in future years. But so that's what's next. We're going to be doing some work with the Defense Suicide Prevention Office, which is an office that was stood up in the Department of Defense specifically to address the challenges of suicide. Vince, it's like, I don't know how many of your listeners would know this, but since 9/11/2001, more than 40,000 veterans and service members have taken their lives. It's the equivalent of like all the sailors in 5th and 7th Fleet, or an entire Army Corps. This is like a massive number of people. And so the Department of Defense has stood up a complete office, and their whole job in life is to research solutions to this problem, and then to get them implemented throughout the services. And so we're going to be doing some projects for them. We're also working with the Marine Corps. They've run a pilot in the Marines. They're like on box number 3. I suppose I should say, Chimney Trail, the activities that we create that teach you about cognitive behavior theory, it's a 5-box set. It looks, in fact, I got one right here. It looks just like this. I don't know if this will be on video, but it's just like something that comes in the mail. And then when you open the kit, there's this little tabletop. And this book is what teaches you about the cognitive distortions. And then inside the kit is everything you need to do an activity. It's like outdoor gear that's fun, that supports an activity, that reinforces the learning that you get through the book and some of our audiovisual material. So the Marines are actually doing this curriculum already. They're on box number 3. And so that's what's next, man, is that we're expanding. I'm giving lectures. I'll go out and I'll talk about cognitive behavior theory and prospect theory to corporate audiences and military audiences. And for the next, I'd say 18 months or so, we're going to be very laser focused on our government accounts and our corporate accounts. So if you've got listeners that work for a company who take psychological performance and wellness seriously, we're standing by to help. We can support.
I appreciate that. And kudos for the exclusive you shared with us. EY definitely is going to benefit for all the 5 boxes and everything you bring to the table. And hopefully the whole DOD will jump on board here in the near future. We're putting it out there today. So congrats, Matthew. So let's transition a bit and talk about leadership. So what do you do to help you strive in the leadership arena? What do you do to sharpen your skill sets?
One of the things that I have discovered is that when you're in the military, you take the idea of a team totally for granted. And then when you get out and let's say you're trying to do something entrepreneurial, when you first start, like you do not have a team. I mean, you might have like a partner or something like that, but you don't have that same like mid-size unit camaraderie that you just totally took for granted while you were in the service. And people are like, hey, why do service members have a hard time when they transition? I genuinely think that's the main reason. It's like you go from this environment where you are genuinely on a team and you can feel the team element, and then you take that away and it's like removing, I don't like using the term family because you can't fire your family, uh but like a professional sports team is sort of the analogy. Like people who are committed to a common cause and are executing together, and when you remove that from somebody, uh it's a challenge. So in my leadership journey, I benefited from the military's team atmosphere tremendously. I mean, I even got to be the captain of a ship, and when you're the captain of a ship, it's like it's the very definition of team. And then now I've seen the other side, which is starting a company basically from scratch, and not having that same sense of camaraderie because you have to build it. Like it doesn't just come out of nowhere. You have to take time to build it. And so most of my leadership energy is spent in two ways. The first is basic blocking and tackling for like management principles. And then the second the reason it's basic blocking and tackling of management principles is because I want to respect everybody's time. I think that's very valuable. And then the second is trying to recreate that team, because it's just so healthy. And I think it makes for a powerful organization.
Yes, a rising tide does rises and raises all ships, right? So
That's it.
definitely a great mentality. Teams, we are a team sport, just like any other team out there.
Yeah.
I love it hearing that. So having an emerging leader listen in. What advice did you receive either in the Navy or as an entrepreneur you'd like to share with them today?
Two things. The first is that there is no job in the company or no job in the service that you're too good for. I think there's this interesting phenomenon where people will uh, train in a certain skill set, or they will go to college or whatever the case might be, and then they feel like I went to college and now like I shouldn't go chip paint or repair the ship, and that couldn't be further from the case. You have to do the hard like labor work, and you need to do it for a good period of time so that you can understand your management decisions, you can understand your own leadership decisions. And for a company when you're first starting out, that means like the doing a podcast every day. Like you're disciplined and you're doing this thing every day, and you might want to grow the business in other directions, but you're like, you know what, I got to do the podcast, I got to do the technical heavy lifting to get this thing launched. And there's a bunch of these sorts of things. You just got to be comfortable. You have to be comfortable uh, doing the work. And then the second bit, and this is the one that I always struggle with from a leadership perspective, is stopping and appreciating where you are in the moment in your journey. I mean, I can tell you just yesterday we signed an absolutely terrific contract. This is a huge deal for the company. And this morning I woke up and I was already thinking about what's next. And so there's a thing where you have to say, as a leader for your organization, you need to say, okay, time out. Let's celebrate what just took place. Like we planned together, like we ideated together, we planned together, we executed together, we succeeded together. And then like I have this terrible habit of just like going off from there and like figuring out the next thing so that we can start the process over again. and you really do have to slow down, get everybody together, and celebrate your wins.
I love it. I'm glad that you're hungry for more vision and more appetite, right? But you're right. You have to take a knee every once in a while and celebrate those wins, because that's what's going to get you through the tough times to the next one. I definitely also love the fact that, get out of that seat of being the captain and, scrub the ship too, because it does add value. Plus, other individuals are seeing that from a leader's perspective. That's great. They're going to follow you. So love that advice you gave today. How about a memorable leadership aha moment you've had that you'd like to share with our audience as well?
When you're building something that has not ever existed before, you have to, and you're trying to create value in people's lives, there's no room for, hey, it's good enough. Oh, it's great. Like, you're constantly in pursuit of a better version of it, because you're trying to maximize the value that you're giving to the people that are participating in this thing that you've built. And with our particular mission, we're literally trying to save lives. It's people are taking their own lives because of destructive anxiety and depression. We know that there's science that says that we can push back on that with something real. We've got doctors on our team who are absolutely incredible. And so I want to be very respectful of their time. And so that means getting better every day. But I was, we were talking, my wife and I were talking. I had just gotten off a call that didn't go our way in business, like some sort of business thing. And I noticed that my oldest daughter, her name is Ainsley, she's 12. She was like being very quiet, and she was just sort of like sitting there. And that's not customary. She's normally a very like gregarious is probably the wrong word, but she loves to like engage. So it was weird that she was sort of like detached. And I was like, what? I asked my wife, Jen, what's wrong with Ainsley? And she's like, I don't know. And so I went over and I started talking to her, and I said, what's wrong? And she said, oh, nothing. And I was like insistent, as dads generally are. Like, I wanted to figure out like what's eating at her, because we can fix it, whatever it is. And she was like, I just didn't want to bring it up because like you had a rough day, and I just like you were just sounding like you're having to be disappointed all the time. And I was like, oh my God, it's like a dagger to your heart. Like, if your kid is seeing you disappointed, and it couldn't be further from my reality. Like, we're so proud of the company and so proud of what it's doing, but sometimes that pursuit of getting to the next level makes it at least look like maybe you're not proud of what it is that you've accomplished, or you're not happy, like you're not carrying it happily. And like, my aha moment was that I need to carry this differently, if not for myself and my own like my physical health, it definitely for my kids, because they're watching every move that I make, and if they're sensing uh, unrest, then I'm like giving that to them, like unintentionally. And so I've made a lot of strides, if that makes sense. And I hope that your listeners get something out of that, particularly if they're on the entrepreneurial journey. Like, you can change, and it's okay to change. Carry it lightly.
Absolutely. Love that strategy. And talk about change and challenges. What strategies do you use to deal with change and challenges with your team going forward?
I think this is going to sound super cliche, but you have to talk, you have to communicate, you have to over communicate. I think in order to prepare yourself for change, in order to be ready, because change is inevitable. In fact, as a startup, you want the change, because like the last thing you want to do is stay a small company. You want to see it grow and succeed. And so, in order to be prepared for that next level, from a leadership standpoint, how to essentially vaccinate yourself against deterioration during change is to over communicate with your team. They have to understand the strategic relevance of what it is that they're doing. You can't go to work every day and just like clock in. And there's this really great story where there were these three bricklayers, and they were all working on a church. They were like masonry folks. They were working on this church, and they asked the one guy, "What are you doing?" And he was like, "I'm laying brick." And then they asked the second guy, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm developing my craft. I want to become a master mason." And they asked the third guy, And he said, I'm building a door to the kingdom of heaven. Because he was like, I mean, these are like three very different ways of looking at the exact same thing, which is laying bricks. And I think giving your team the strategic like vision, like what the hell it is that we're all doing here, and making sure that they're current on that every day makes them more in the, hey, I'm building a door to the kingdom of heaven, rather than just like, hey, I'm slinging brick. So
No,
yeah, that's how you do
absolutely.
change.
I love it. That strategy talking about, the North Star, over
Yeah,
communicate that North Star, that purpose is so important versus just laying brick versus having to opening, creating that door to heaven. I love
yeah.
that. Thank you for that story. And folks listening in and wanting to know how to get involved or how to even engage with you for what you do, how to contact you, Matthew, or Chimney Trail Health.
Yeah, so the easiest way is just to shoot me an email. I'm at Matthew, so Matthew at chimneytrail.com. That's it. And then you can also visit our website, which is www.chimneytrailhealth.com. And yeah, you can always find me on LinkedIn. I'm a reasonably reliable presence on LinkedIn. I like to share what the team is up to, and it just shares some like anecdotes on how Chimney Trail Health can help your company or can help your command. We do a lot of work for individual military commands. So yeah, if you've got folks that are in the service that are listening to this, we're actually doing that work with Defense Suicide Prevention Office that I was talking about. We're doing some preliminary work for it where we're going to individual commands and providing a seminar. And so we can have one of these seminars at your command if you're interested, and feel free to reach out and we'll set it up.
Oh, absolutely. And folks, we're going to have this part of our show notes in our video to be able to get a hold of Matthew and Chimney Trail Health. Now, folks, if you want to get a hold of the Leadership Void, you can reach us at theleadershipvoid@gmail.com, where you can send your correspondence. If you would like to see another featured guest like Matthew, or you would like to discuss a leadership topic, just let us know by those means. And lastly, we're grateful for our sponsor, A Hero for Kids, Triple Nickel, and FAVOB for sponsoring. But today is all about Matthew and Chimney Trail Health. Matthew, thank you for being on the show and much success in the future.
Thanks, Vince. So much. Thanks. Appreciate you having me.